Early one morning, Rex, Bert and Mike were waiting in the sheds when the small controller came to see them. "Mike, Rex and Bert," he began, "with your help we've finally finished the construction of this railway." The line had been mostly constructed when the engines had arrived a few days ago, and their assistance had meant that it was finished in short order. "Tomorrow's going to be the grand opening," the manager continued. "Bert and Rex, you'll be taking passengers on tours up and down the line." "What about me, sir?" Mike asked. The manager turned to Mike. "You'll be on freight duties, Mike, arranging trucks in the yard and demonstrating the chute for the VIPs. "Trucks!" Mike exclaimed. He didn't like working with trucks and would much rather have worked with passenger cars. "Yes," the manager replied. Mike wasn't too happy about it. Mike was still fuming about it later that day. In fact, he was so cross that he forgot to watch what he was doing as he shunted some hoppers up onto the chute. "Slow down, Mike," called his driver, but it was too late. Before Mike could stop, the hoppers ran off the end of the chute and toppled onto Donald's tender. "Ouch!" Donald exclaimed. "That hurt!" A few hours later, the workmen had re-railed the two ballast hoppers that had come off the end of the chute. As Mike puffed forward to collect them, Donald shot him an angry look. "You do know that you're supposed to dump the ballast and not the hoppers, don't you?" Before Mike could reply, Donald puffed away angrily. Rex puffed alongside a few moments later. He glanced over at the battered hoppers, the spilled ballast, and the workmen still tidying up the mess. It was easy enough for him to put two and two together. "Did you have an accident, Mike?" Rex asked. "Well, I sort of wasn't watching where I was going." "I wonder what our manager will have to say." "Yes," Mike said, looking worried. Mike found out soon enough. "We cannot afford to have careless behaviour like that," he told Mike sternly. "You'll stay in the sheds until you're wanted. Rex will have to do your work at the grand opening tomorrow as well as his own. I'm very disappointed in you, Mike." It was beautiful weather the next day, just perfect for the grand opening. Douglas was bringing a special train of passengers up, tourists who wanted to see the new railroad. He could hear the music of a brass band playing as he approached the yard. He looked around, taking in the sight before him. There was a small crowd around the bandstand that had been set up in the yard, and there were more people waiting at the station to be taken along the Arlesdale Railway. "And now for something completely different," Douglas exclaimed. "You didn't see a bandstand in a railroad yard that often." "You can say that again," Thomas said as he came alongside. Douglas glanced over. "What brings you up here, Thomas?" "I brought a special train up from Farquhar," Thomas replied. "You didn't say." Douglas hadn't realised that the grand opening was going to be that grand. "I didn't get me wrong," Douglas continued. "It's good to see another railway up and running on the island. What I didn't get is why all this fash." "My driver says it's all for publicity," Thomas replied. "Well, they seem to be enjoying it." Douglas was right. Rex and Bert were having a wonderful time taking passengers up and down the line and showing off their new railway. It was the first chance that the engines had had to really stretch their wheels since they'd arrived. It also gave them a chance to learn the line. Mike wasn't enjoying himself though, sitting alone in the shed. He could hear the music in the distance, along with the people having a good time, and he was beginning to feel left out. Further up the line, Bert was waiting for Rex to arrive so he could depart with his passenger train. He wasn't feeling too well, and had been feeling a bit short of steam ever since he'd left Arlesdale, at the far end of the line. Once Rex had passed, Bert began to pull forward. He was struggling to get his train moving. "Come on, Bert," his driver said encouragingly. "You can do it." Bert wasn't too sure. He knew he needed to get his passengers back to Arlesdale, but every turn of his wheels was becoming harder and harder to make. I'll try to get to the next station," Bert panted as he struggled along the line. The trip to the next station had seemed like ages, but finally he made it in. Using his last few puffs of steam, Bert limped into the station. "If I rebuild your fire, Bert, will you be able to make it to Arlesdale West?" his driver asked. "I don't think so, driver." "We've got to get the passengers home." "What about Mike?" "Of course," Bert's driver exclaimed. He had forgotten that Mike had been relegated to the shed due to his clumsiness. Grabbing his radio telephone, Bert's driver put in a call to the manager. Mike was surprised when the manager came running up to him. "Bert's broken down and needs to be rescued. Can you do it?" Mike brightened up. "I'd be happy to, sir. Be careful now," the manager warned. Mike's driver quickly arrived and built Mike's fire. Then they headed out. Mike quickly arrived at the first station and backed down onto Bert's train. "Run out of puff again, Bert?" he asked. The three engines had worked together before coming to the Arlesdale Railway, and it wasn't the first time Bert had broken down like this. Bert didn't reply. He was saving his steam for the trip back. "Come on," Mike added. "Let's get these people home." Summoning all of his strength, Mike began to pull Bert and his train of tourists forward. Bert tried to do what he could, but unfortunately that wasn't much. Mike had been giving it his all, and so they made good time. He steamed triumphantly into the Arlesdale West yard. As Mike brought the train into the station, he could hear applause coming from behind him. A moment later, he realised it was the passengers. They quickly climbed out and crowded round the engines, and thanked Mike for rescuing them. "Well done, Mike," the manager said. "You'll be rewarded with a new coat of paint." "Thank you, sir," Mike replied. "As for you, Bert, we cannot afford to have you breaking down like this." Bert looked downcast. "I'm sorry, sir." "Which is why," the manager continued, "we're going to give you a complete rebuild. You'll feel like a new engine." Bert brightened up. "Thank you, sir." "Come on, Bert," Mike said. "Let's get you to the workshop." And with that, the two engines headed off.